Hello, welcome to Left Right Out. First day of April, and this is not an April Fool's. I kind of despise that. Despise April Fools. It's just stupid. And how can you even distinguish April Fools from anything anymore? Because a lot of these things that you probably in the past seen as April Fools is actually they're actually true stories now. Anyhow, I want to remind everybody that there's a number of laptops running around that are incriminating to one side, and that let's go over them. Seth Rich, Anthony Weiner, um, Hunter Biden, and then also whatever kind of laptop hard drives that were confiscated on off of Epstein Island that have gone into ether that we have no idea. So just a friendly reminder that those things exist and are not being talked about. Not to mention black books, stuff that are off electrical grids with Maxine, whatever her name is. You know who I'm talking about. Her black book of Epstein clientele. Let's go over some interesting things too. It looks like Jen Psaki is going to leave to go to MSNBC to host some show or whatever, and the revolving door continues with leftist apparatus members, members of the party, and being able to get out and get lucrative deals. There you go. I mean, you look at all the intelligence heads. Coincidentally, the same guys that signed the document stating that Hunter Biden's laptop's more than likely Russian propaganda and are very anti-Trump, and many of them lying in front of Congress, and no accountability. They just get $1 million deals through legacy media that's dying. All right. Biden's plan to lower gas prices. Ooh, this was a good one because we talked about the strategic oil reserve last time when they were going to release some of that. Well, now they're going to release 1 million barrels for like 60 days or something like that. Well, here's the thing. Yes, that is operating off the supply side, but it's on a finite scale in the immediate. And what is the strategic oil reserve for? There's a strategic naval oil reserve that's actually a landmass, I believe, in the western United States, Four Corners area, which is tremendous shell resources and gas and but that's viewed as I believe, it's strategic naval reserve. But I could be wrong on that one. I know some kind of strategic reserve there. Then you have the strategic oil reserve where we actually have barrels of oil that are there for a strategic reason in case of a world or a conflict where supply disruptions are occurring, and we need to fuel the war machine in order to win on the battlefield, and we're using this as a political tool in the worst possible time. And no, I don't want high gas prices or whatever. This is irregardless. It's a one-time shot in the arm, adrenaline shot, even if that's like a really weak one. 1 million barrels. I believe that's like 5% of what we just us use. Instead of operating off the side of let's get more efficient, let's get more productive on the energy side. Let's incentivize companies to develop certain energy resources responsibly in a way that's not necessarily like North Dakota, but more like in the realm of when Colorado used to produce oil, when there used to be friendly to companies, where you had reclamation, where you had companies that come in after the sites where they'd replant. They would make sure that they're wildlife friendly areas. We could do that in Alaska. We can build safe pipelines instead of selling these, importing all this oil via tanker. So that's one thing. So what's happening is we are dwindling our supplies and our strategic oil reserves in a time where geopolitical risk is at its highest that I believe the United States has ever seen. Excuse me, higher than whatever the Cuban Missile Crisis is. We're on the precipice of possible. Any little spark could ignite a literal all-out war in various dynamics, whether that could be kinetic, ground-to-ground, or air-to-air battle space, or even nuclear on this homeland, on our homeland, on Russian and Ukrainian soil, European soil. And the fact that we are willing to dwindle these resources down for a quick shot, is a quick shot in the arm is unconscionable. And this guy, it just proves that, excuse me, the left apparatus is either trying to destroy us, or they cannot think on a long-term perspective, and they only think on short-sighted political reasoning. Not to say that the right does any better, but I'm just, these guys are the greatest perpetrators. They happen to be the ones that are skewing, really swinging the wheel off to the left here, off the side of the cliff. So I'm against that. We should be stockpiling the oil, if anything. Maybe we stop buying oil for the strategic reserve to replenish it, and we just hold steady. That way we take some of our demand for that, because there was, there's some turning, or it used to be. I know Trump stocked it up pretty well, and then we were dwindling that under the last release, and then maybe we just stop so we're not in there, and we just hold steady, and then we work on productive, innovative energy development. And that's crazy. So let's get on the other side of that, which is the ruble acceptance. So we know that Europe is pushing back on that, but I think Russia's holding tight on that. And in fact, there's rumor mill is that they're willing to accept hard assets, which would be gold or silver. I'd imagine more likely gold in that regard, possibly Bitcoin. But I've heard gold, and it would be tied to a certain amount of grams per ruble. That's interesting. I mean, there's probably more on that. I just glazed over a couple articles, which is perfectly in line and strategically an amazing move for the Russians. I'll tell you that, for that axis. When you call them I'll call them the Axis powers over there, which I'm going to equate to Russia, China, Iran, possibly India at this point, and I'm not going to put North Korea in there because North Korea is on a whole nother level there. But and then you could put it other BRIC nations, even Brazil, on that in that regard. I was trying to go through. There were some other articles that were pretty enlightening here. Let me see if I can pull one up. But keep in mind, this whole Ukrainian-Russian conflict there's three different dynamics. All right, so what you're going to report on. There's the tactical level, which is things that are going on the ground, things that are happening, kinetically or movement-wise with people, particular engagements and whatnot. Then there's operational level, which is like a higher order, military warfare. We're looking at actual geographic regions where there's multiple units moving around, and maybe not on the same mission, but they're doing different things. And then the strategic level, which is where we are getting our asses handed to us right now by these guys, because they are thinking. And it goes back. I hate using this terminology because they did it with Trump, but Putin and them are playing chess, and we're playing some kind of third grade level checker game, and I that's the best way to put it in a sense. The Russians, they released some documents. I was able to look at a couple of them, and they relate more some of the emails off Hunter Biden's laptop, which leads me to believe that they possibly have copies or corroborating evidence towards some of the activities that were going on with the president's son, possibly the president. But they released some stuff that linked his companies to the biolabs, and also a contract, I believe, with Turkey. I mean, you could look it up. You need to look this stuff up. I know. I'm just popping this stuff in your head so that you can keep this in your brain housing group. Look it up, verify it. But I've seen some of this stuff pop out, and possibly contracts with certain with Ukrainian entities for drones and also aerosol-based delivery systems for, which be presumably biological or chemical weapons, which the Russians are now asserting that was, that massing of troops and going into the Donbass before their invasion, that there's possibly a biological chemical attack that was being planned, and they are using this documentation as corroborating evidence. The Fed's inflation, the thing they look at, their inflationary number, which is also kind of convoluted or whatever, is highest point in whatever 30 years, if you can even relate it back then, if they even measure the stuff the same. Man, I don't know why I want to get on your cough. So where are they at? Crickets. They're not doing anything. They're not raising rates, which the market itself is going to probably start raising rates, especially as dollar reserves start dwindling. If what's the incentive for Europe to hold dollars, or what assets are they going to use to get rubles if they have to purchase gas and oil from Russia? Well, they're probably going to get rid of their dollars unless there's some kind of Fed, ECB, menangling, a menagerie of whatever crap that they pull. But that would seem to be the easiest thing, is to get rid of their dollars and use that, which is, it's interesting to see how this dollar deleveraging is happening throughout the world, which will impact us. You will take out a lot of the side of people that, entities, foreign banks, and sovereign wealth funds that, invest in treasuries, which will have upward pressure on interest rates, which will have downward pressure on our standard of living since we're so leveraged. So anyway, I've talked about that a lot, and maybe I should go into a little bit more detail when we get into yield curves inverted. I've talked about this last couple days, or I brought it up to your attention. I really talked about it, but think about it in a way like short term, parking your assets in a certain or parking your cash reserves, your liquidity in a certain asset yields you more than it is lending out in a number X amount of years greater than that said asset that you're holding. So it doesn't make any sense. It constrains any kind of liquidity when it comes to, like, say you want to take out a long-term loan for a mortgage or a business or capital goods or whatnot. So that's where stuff starts hurting on the margins when it comes to rolling over debt for companies that barely are making it, zombie companies. I could think of a couple off my top of my head. You can look at the percentage of S&P 500 companies, Dow components, that are these zombie companies that rely on debt markets. And as these interest rates, you're going to see certain projects that are non-economical go to the wayside. Just see some of these companies fold. We're just in the ground working of that, and nobody's doing anything about it. The Fed needs to rein in liquidity at this time. If you really want to talk about prices, you need to. We cannot supply enough goods and services to offset the amount of monetary expansion. So you have to rein this in, and there is crickets right now, in my opinion. They went a quarter point, and then they talked a good game. It's not even a good game, to a half a point, to three-quarters, some full point. You need to go way further than that, but they're talking they can't even act on that game. They can only talk about it. Their balance sheet is just now leveling off. They're not even in the QT. We're sitting here, we're hemorrhaging as the American public, and they're doing nothing. I don't know what to tell you. And the public has been lulled. We've been misinformed, uneducated about the system that we operate in. We've been told that it's a free enterprise capitalistic system when it's inherently not. We have the largest tenet of socialism operating, and that is in a centralized bank. And it affects every transaction that we take in, because the price of money is fixed, and they print willy-nilly. And they use that, and they are the perpetrators of the ability for the government to go in such debt and staves off other capital. There's a lot of other things. We got a buildup of troops in the east. I know some Marine Corps fighter attack F-18 squadrons. I think one or two of them are being sent over to Eastern Europe. Which usually, if you send them the Marine side, see F-18s, you can use those. Their fighter attack. I mean, you can use them for bombing or bombing certain strategic areas or whatnot within country. But usually the Marine Corps, the pilot's a little more adept at close air support, and typically if you're going to send somebody in there to bomb targets or to conduct, no-fly zone, you send in aircraft carrier with maybe a naval aviators, which inherently you're going to have a Marine squadron on one of those carriers anyway. But typically, I think our pilots tend to operate on the close air support for ground elements. I mean that's their primary mission. So I don't know what that tells you a little bit. I don't understand. I'm not saying that there'll be a ground war, but it seems like a preparation for that. Which, why isn't anybody talking about peace? Why isn't Biden taking the forefront on developing a peace plan on this? There's huge conflicts of interest at this point. A lot of questions to be asked, and of course you're not going to get that in the mainstream, about why we are on the forefront of brokering peace and calling for some sort of agreement between these countries and us negotiating with them, because inherently this battleground is really a pseudo war between us and Russia in a sense, or NATO and Russia. So let's cut the bullshit and let's start talking about what we can do to stop this crap. But we haven't done that. Sanction, which is an acts of war. In my opinion, sanctions are acts of war. And we can go in there. I'm going to go into a whole nother thing when it comes to the seizure of assets for Russian citizens or people of Russian descent that just happen to be in these Western countries and supposedly free nations, that people's assets are being seized with no due process whatsoever, and supposedly we're the free country. That's what pisses me off as somebody, and I know a lot of people that have served in the military and wrote that check, or put it on a piece of paper that they're willing to cash this check for their life, go out there and do these things for the idea of freedom, of for us the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and then these corrupt individuals are pissing all over that, and they have been with the citizenry inside this country, and nobody's really stood up. I mean, we're just now awakening to the double standards that we see. Oh, the other thing, okay, Clinton, the other laptop scenario. How about the Clinton email server? Where's that? Maybe Russia has some of that information. If they're such a good at cyber warfare, why they ought to release that crap, right? I know Trump tried to get them to. It's like, now's the time, guys. Now's the time to start releasing whatever information you had to awaken what is left of people that are closed-minded in this country. I'm sorry to say that, but sometimes you have to address the problem. Let's stop the bleeding instead of just ignoring it as we bleed slowly to death. It might be painful to come to the realization that the political apparatus is completely and utterly corrupt. We might be the most corrupt state that's ever existed. I don't, it's seemingly that way, and it's not people in back rooms. Granted, there are people that sit at clubs and smoke cigars and all that jazz. I've seen it. I've seen it up there. But I mean, and you casually talk, but it's not necessarily like you see in the movies with people that are like the X-Files guy that smokes the cigarette that's willing to kill. They're not looking at us as like pawns on the thing. It's just people that believe that they're more astute and more adept at managing other people, and believe that a lot of them don't take into account they think they're smarter than they actually are. And they think they're better, and they get insulated within themselves. And somebody brought this up, and I'll get Robert Barnes again because I listen to him sometimes, but he brought this up. It's like these secret society type people. What it is an apparatus of individuals of a certain class that believe that they're better. And once somebody achieves that, like whether it be a Zuckerberg, or you wonder what whoever the case may be, they come up in this up the dregs of society, and they get in this next level, and then they're invited to and I've seen this too, invited to certain clubs, to certain gatherings, and you're kind of inculcated or brought into the fold of how you're supposed to act, and you're now a different part of society now, and this is how we act, this is how we do things. And that's entirely true. That's how a lot of this stuff operates. But I'm going to leave it there because we're almost at 20 minutes. I hate going over 20 minutes at this point until we get where I can actually get some kind of return off this. But anyway, looking at all that stuff, this is interesting. This is Left, Right, Out. Peace.